Hello and welcome to One on One. I'm Vernon Ramazar, and today we continue our conversation with Hanif Benjamin, clinical therapist and trauma specialist from the Center for Human Development. Thanks for sticking around, Hanif.
No problem.
Now, we're talking about the fact that we're going into a difficult period economically, but that needn't necessarily be a difficult period psychologically once we have the tools to handle it.
Correct.
As we ended off our last bit of conversation, we were talking about the impact on crime. Is there a nexus between crime and a downturn in economies?
Of course, and we have seen that for the last couple of years. And I would tie it closely to society and societal problems that we're seemingly not addressing. And I think the time has come for us to take a critical look at society and the societal ills or problem that we're facing and come up with permanent solutions to deal with them. Now, the more we get into a difficult period, the more some people are going to be left behind. And when people are left behind, they have to survive some way, just human nature. Unfortunately, the way they will survive might not be a legal way.
But by preying on others.
Correct. So even, and I don't want to only put it to the boy out there with the gun in his hand. I'm talking about.
Well, this is distinct from like gang culture and things.
Correct.
These are people who are forced into the margins and have no option in their mind except to resort to crime.
Correct. So you might find, and this is something that our police service might also know, you might find, again, because of history, that there are certain crimes that might become more prevalent, right? You're going to talk, people might be stealing from their own companies and from, so those are some of the fallouts that we might find when looking at economic difficult period.
So not necessarily violent crime, but all kinds of crime.
Correct. But I think it gives rise to a lot of crime. We can talk about different types of crime, for example, prostitution, right? That might also become on the rise. Even drug use, because people might become so frustrated that they think they need to smoke or drink to calm things down. So that might also become an issue that we can look at. Also, we have to look at abuse and human trafficking and all of these things, local trafficking where people traffic their own children to make money. We might also want to look at the vulnerable, because when a family is pushed into a corner where abuse is taking place, they may not want to report it because the abuser might be giving the family money and or the children certain things. So those are some of the societal fallout.
And I imagine domestic violence as well would definitely be in the
frustration, right? Men losing their job or women losing their job, they can't deal with the situation, or they become frustrated because now they want more, they want you to produce more for less, and you're not being part of the equation. So you find out people might be more frustrated and not able to manage this. Again, going back to mental health, stress and anxiety, and now that might play out itself in family life. We might look at family breaking up and all these different type of things. So those are some of the societal challenges along with crime that we're going to see, or we might or can see permeating because of this situation.
Now, on a larger scale, I know you said you were a child in the late 80s when we had a similar situation facing us, well, we were in the middle of it actually, but that ended up with us having an attempted coup.
Correct. Difficult
social
moment.
unrest, and it's a trauma we're still trying to recover from.
Yes, we're still managing that. Well, not even managing, we're still dealing with that trauma every day. So again, history is there, and I said, history has been put there to teach us how not to. Mm-hmm. And if we don't take stock of what happened then and change the way, then we will be doomed to repeat what happened then. And that is why, Vernon, I am here today to say to people that we must come up with alternatives in managing this situation so that we don't repeat those things of old.
But as a nation, we're constantly repeating the same problems that we had in the past because we don't learn any lessons, do we?
Because we're happy. That's what they said. We're happy people.
God is a Trinity.
Yeah, God is a Trinity. Somebody said that the other day as well. And it begs a question as to, in terms of our own ingenuity, our own thinking, our own ideology, like, why aren't we moving? My Facebook post for 2016 was, my prayer for this country is that people will wake up and become free thinkers. people would wake up and become people who can have proper conversation based on their own analysis, based on their own research, based on their own development, and not what some political divide or some religious divide said to them. That they will be able to wake up and say, this is where I'm at, and this is based on my research, and make informed decision. But here it is, we just go with the flow. We just go with the flow. And because of that, we are in what we are in. Right? And I mean, during the break, we were talking about whether or not this can also be a good thing. And I think, yes, it gives us an opportunity, not only on a national level, but on a personal level, to look at the way we have been living, to look at the way we have been managing our economy, personal and otherwise, and how to come up with creative ways to keep ourselves, you know, in the game, basically.
I think of one of our neighbors, Aruba, which of course used to be heavily dependent on oil and refining. And when that went bust and the refinery pulled out, they suddenly had to get creative.
Correct.
And they came up with tourism.
Right.
And now they're doing even better than they were
with
back
oil
in the
and
old
gas.
days. Yeah.
Because I'm trying to figure out, Vernon, and this is what bothers me. Why are we thinking that we will have oil and natural gas forever? And if it is that oil and natural gas seem to fall, why are we in a quandary? I don't get it. It means that we are not planning. It means that we don't have foresight or vision. And again, it means that we are dependent on one track. It means as a people, we have not begun to think about moving to tomorrow. We are not looking at tomorrow in a different lens. If all we are concentrating on is this oil and natural gas, I think this is an opportunity for us to really re-engineer ourselves and re-engineer the way we do things so that we can become independent, period. Not dependent on any one commodity, but rather become dependent throughout Trinidad and Tobago.
It's also a time not to be too nostalgic, isn't
Correct,
it? Looking
correct.
back in the rearview mirror and going, oh, things were so good back then, and
That
oh
was,
dear,
it was.
woe is me.
Yeah, it was. So we, again,
That was
we
then,
look,
this is now.
Correct. We look at the past for the lessons learned, and we take it into the future and say, this is where we are, this is what we will not repeat, and this is where we want to go. But we always seem to be just pivoting on one area of it, and we just always keep dancing in this one area, and we seem to not move, you know, any further because we're quite comfortable in this squat position.
Spinning top in mud, as we
Correct.
say locally. Yeah.
And it's dangerous, and that is why we may not have moved as much as we could have moved, right? Because I still think about the agricultural sector in this country. I mean, when you look at the agricultural sector, we could have the engine room of the region. And why are we importing so much? It means, again, that we are not doing something right here, or we are not doing enough of whatever it is. It means that we're still dependent on. You see? So again, this gives us an opportunity. And again, when you go back to classic sociology, it tells us, it's there. We move from an agrarian society to an industrialized society. Because why? Because when this was failing, people felt that there was need to re-engineer themselves. You see, when we move from the agrarian society of fork and hoe and shovel, we recognize that we had to create machines to do what we do. So this is an opportunity for us to re-engineer where we are at. This is an opportunity for us to look at our society. We have tens of thousands of social workers in this country who study society, who know society like myself. We now need to understand where society is at, where the most vulnerable among us lay, and how we can move them. But then when you look at houses and the housing grant, the ministry, millions of dollars put down there. $250,000 to finish your home. If the land and the deed is yours, why people are not accessing it? Because the application tick like this, and it is the most cumbersome and the most troubling application ever. Why aren't we accessing social services to help people move? Because the people who need it are illiterate in some instances and cannot read or write, and there's no help to get them to understand it. So therefore, they're not accessing it as they should. So they remain in poverty. You understand? So one of the things that the government must look at in that ministry is how to streamline some of these applications
Ease
to
of
make
delivery,
it, of course, to make it less cumbersome so that people could build themselves. People know that if you could bake and you want to bake pies and sell, do you know you have a grant to get a stove? That you could go get a stove and bake and go by the corner and sell pies? Where is this, you know, we can help people to get food badge and help them. We make things difficult. I mean, I do want to start to talk about my experience at Netco when I just opened this company. It's the most cumbersome, most difficult process, and still I didn't get through. You understand? So we're saying to small businesses that you must register business and get it moving, but the help is almost like
we have this available, that available, that available, and you have to jump through these hoops.
Correct, to get it.
Yeah.
So by the time I realized the hoops to jump through, I'm tired. I need to get, so you go to alternative source, you go to the bank where they give you the $1 billion interest rates. You understand? So if you're brave enough to want to do it, then you have to be brave enough to jump through all these hoops. And you see me, I can't jump through much hoops well, you know, so.
Let's talk about politics as well, because that plays into psychology. We've obviously had a transition of government this past September, but now as we're going into difficult times, we're seeing the government, the PNM in this case, saying one thing, and then you have the previous administration saying, oh no, if you kept us, you know, things would have been much better, and they're doing, how does that affect people psychologically thinking, and what if I should have voted differently, kind of thing?
You know, I don't think it's about, you know, we could have voted differently. I think it's stupidity, hands down stupidity. I think that we are, and over the weekend I heard a quote where we put governments in power and we could remove them. Right, we have that power, and again, because of our nonchalant behavior, we are not recognizing the power that we wield. The right index finger has that power, and we don't understand the power that it wields. Now, we're in a very difficult situation, whether or not the UNC regime want to accept it or not, or whether or not the PNM want to, at this point, we need both leaders to stand up to this country and to say to this country, we are in difficult times.
As opposed to creating uncertainty.
Correct. So when you have one fighting on one end and the one on the other fight, it does nothing for the country. It does nothing for the economy. As a matter of fact, I think it further divides us. Because we are coming from a difficult period in the election where people are still leaving nasty comments on Facebook and other social media. So it means that we have not even gotten over that. And now we're in a difficult economic situation where we're seemingly playing politics with it. This is not a time for that, Vernon. As a matter of fact, people, if you talk on one side, they think you're pro-PNM or you're against UNC. And I'm saying that is foolishness, and it's time for us to stop that.
Because if the boat sinks, we're all going down together.
Thank you very much. It is not, well, if you go, let's take Titanic. I cried in the movies, long movie. Let's cry. Didn't the boat, whether the people, it's a perfect example. The people were at the top, and there were people at the bottom of the boat. And when that boat went, everybody drowned. Well, except the few. You understand? So, when we go down, we're all going down. Whether or not you're on the UNC side or are you going to go to one side of the country, it makes no sense. It's stupidity. And we need to get out of this level of thinking so that the country, Vernon, the country can get where it needs to get, to go. I always like to use the example of the pie. We all have our responsibility on that pie. I've never seen a pie that comes with 11 slices and it's supposed to be a 12. I've never seen it. It means then that we must take our responsibility. My responsibility as a person studying to be a social scientist, as a person, as a clinician, as a social worker, is to find ways that we can grow our economy to help our middle class, who are the lower class, who are the most consumers of the government resources, as it were. We need to find ways to get them out of that and to get them into sustainability. We need to push that, right? We need to, the religious the IRI, they made a statement. David Abdullah made a statement. All of these people need to find their place on that pie and do it well. Because at this time, we require all hands on deck. Yes, I understand who might have stolen money, who didn't steal money, who should go to jail. Yes, let that course take its journey. But right now, we need, as the people of Trinidad and Tobago, to come together and say, listen, we need to pull ourselves out of this. How am I going to play a part
I guess it's kind of like having an accident victim lying bleeding on the ground and everybody stands around going, I wonder what led to this, as opposed
This
to trying
one
to
drank,
help.
that one was driving too fast.
As opposed to trying to help the patient live. Right.
Our first priority is to get the patient to the hospital. Right now, Trinidad need to go to the hospital. And that should be our first priority. And as a matter of fact, I was dealing with a case over the weekend. Yeah, I got a call. And it might have been a rape situation. But the victim had a mental breakdown or a manic episode. And you're thinking about carrying them to the station. I say, right now, my only priority is getting this person to stabilization, to a hospital. And that is where we are at. Getting the client, the country, to a state of stabilization. How can we do that? By all of us understanding, first of all. So it means then that the ministers, the government must come to us and tell us where we are and what's going on. And secondly, we must now make informed decisions. Don't make decisions that will further choke us, that will further stagnate us. Because that is what we're doing right now.
The politics is actually muddying that water as well, isn't it? When we're trying to make informed decisions based on what we know is fact. We have one side saying, well, here's the situation, there's no money, we're overextended, etc., etc., and the other side saying, no, no, there's tons of money, they're lying. So as an individual citizen, you have trouble deciding, well
what
which one's
is
the
true,
truth?
what is not true. And again, that is where every person must now put aside their selfish agendas. This is not a time for us to become stars and heroes. This is a time for us to all come together and make it. So when you have all these, because of political persuasion or whatever persuasion, making these statements, it's further damaging the country. And we must say again to them that we will not stand for this. We will not stand. Vernon, I know you know that I'm also the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Association of Social Workers. And in addition to what we spoke about in the first segment, where I'm going to commission a round table to deal with the young professional, I'm also going to be looking at bringing all social workers, social scientists, and people in the government and technocrats and all these people together so that we can talk about how can we eliminate the biggest users of government products and services through the poor and the working middle class people. Let us come together and have frank conversations about how can we move our country forward. Because I think when you look at that ministry and when you look at the middle class and the working poor, they are the ones, we are the ones who will turn the country around internally. And I think it is time for us to have powerful, pointed conversation to help us to make proper decisions. And I think that that is something that I will also be asking a team of people, the association, to come up with and really get things going.
Well, let's put on your clinical therapist hat for a second and let's talk about some practical advice for individuals and families in dealing with this impending sort of financial difficult time we're going through. If you're a parent and you have kids and you have usual responsibilities, what are some practical things you can do to sort of keep the family together and keep everybody sort of calm through this period?
Well, the first thing you need to look at is do a full-up economic assessment of your family, I think. I think knowing your position will also give you a better place to be. Knowing where you are financially, what is there, what is to come, you know, stuff like that. Also, I think that we should stop count eggs or chicken, whichever one comes first. I think that we should start to work with what we have.
So don't count on that bonus that you think you might get.
Correct. At this point, we should start just looking at what is. You know, this is what I have and this is what I will work with. I also think that while we look to the government to give us information, we must also give our children and our family information. You're going through a difficult time, there is uncertainty. Don't wait until you have to come home and say to your wife or your husband, I am no longer employed. Although I am begging and pleading with people not to send people home, let us come up with creative way to keep people. People are willing to work with you once you are having them as part of the table discussion. So don't wait until that happens, if it happened, God forbid, to go home to tell people. Have conversation with your family, keep them in the loop. This is what's going on, this is where I'm thinking, this is where we are. If you're thinking about opening a business or something to help bring extra income, then this is the time to do it. Get it out there. Despite what people might think, people still consume and use a lot of goods and services within the country. So get it going. Temper expectation with your children. Temper expectation. talk to children and let them know that this is what it is. A lot of times,
meaning what? If they're used to getting a certain toy or whatever,
correct.
they listen.
Standard of living, you need to let people know, hey, this is where we are, this is what's going on, this is what we can and cannot do. You know, maybe we're not going to go on vacation.
That's a hard message for kids, though, isn't it? Because they have.
But while
if they come through a good period and are getting everything they wanted, all of a sudden.
I know, but Vernon, we have a belief that young people don't understand, and that is not true. Right? What young people have a difficulty is the way we carry our messages. Right? For those of you who would have come to the Positive Youth Development Training, you would have learned a great deal of techniques. Again, we'll be running it this year. We'll talk about that. But young people, they listen and they understand. But it's the way we convey the message.
So they have to buy into the message.
Correct. They have to understand where we are and believe. And if you communicate this from a youth perspective, you see, the conversation we have with our children are adult to child. They're not understanding. We think that they're understanding what you're saying to them, but they're not, because you're speaking it as if we're having a conversation. If you have conversation with children which are age appropriate, then they will understand. They will understand, but the conversation must be age appropriate. You can't talk to a 14 or 12-year-old the way you will talk to a 30 or 40-year-old. You have to break things down differently. You have to use different method and modalities to explain things to children for them to understand it and to grasp it. And that is what the difficulty is. So it's not as if children don't understand, but the way we deliver our message makes it difficult for them to understand. And if we change the way we approach them, they will understand. So those are some of the practical steps. Again, Vernon, depression, I want family to be on the lookout for it. For people who are having difficult situation and may not be able to verbalize how they feel or verbalize what's going on with them. Again, we're dealing with the male-dominated society. So again, look out for changes in emotion and or behaviors that are going to have you worried and say, hey, you know, this is not how Hanif normally behaves, something wrong. This is not how Hanif normally dress, something is wrong. So we need to be on the lookout for that. Employers need to, that was for home, but I could also go into employers to look out for their staff, what's going on. Again, constant communication, constant planning. Utilize your staff. You will be amazed as to how many of your staff have solutions, practical solutions that can work. Utilize them, listen to them, let them come on the table and bring the suggestion and ratify it and use it. You will be amazed how they will buy into the difficulty when they are sitting and they would have made part of that discussion and made part of some of those suggestions. They will buy into we will cut pay so that we don't have to send people home. We will probably not have vacation as long as you would want, stuff like that. So there are practical ways in which we can do things. But unfortunately, we just went in there and we just start choking the life out of our families and our businesses. And Vernon, if we continue to choke, we will die.
Well, it's obviously going to be a very stressful period for everyone involved. Mm-hmm. I guess it's important that people find positive ways of stress relief as well.
Correct.
Isn't it? Recreation.
Correct. Recreation, family time is going to be important. Spending time with your family, movies, going out there, dinners, stuff like that. Again,
on a budget. Yeah.
On a budget, of course, it keeps the economy growing and keep the economy moving while you continue to do things. Find things to do with your family. San Fernando Hill, Botanical Garden, the zoo.
All free,
free things or things that are minimal in cost that you can utilize with your family. Those are things that you could continue to do. I remember the good old days of card games and dominoes and snake.
We'll always have all fours.
And all fours, yes. So again, find things to do with your family that will relieve stress and or anxiety. That will be important. But more importantly, Vernon, listen to one another, talk to one another. Because I think the more we keep secrets, the more dangerous it will be in the end. It hit you like a ton of bricks. Like, I didn't know this, and the quality of life just changed drastically and you had no idea. So we need to talk to one another constantly so that people would know where we are and what we're about.
I know you're talking about positive things coming out of this, and you mentioned the fact that, materially we may have less, but perhaps ultimately, if we start relying more on family and doing things together as families or as friends or as communities, it will actually improve.
We could build back family life, we build back family structures, we build our community. But more importantly,
which really is a better quality of life,
correct.
even if it's not materially better. Yeah.
Correct. Because I tell people I grew up, everybody know, I mean, no secret, I grew up.
You were a South boy.
Abject poverty, but I call it humbling. I will not give up my childhood for anything. If I had to do it, I would do it just the way it was. You understand? I think it inculcated values and morals in me that will stay with me forever. And I think that propelled me to be doing what I do today. So I will continue doing that. But I think it also gives us the opportunity to become, more creative, look at things differently, come up with better and exciting ways of doing things, and push the limit in terms of what we can and cannot do.
Well, Hanif Benjamin of the Center for Human Development, we're glad you're doing what you do.
Amen.
A great pleasure as always having you in the program.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here.
2016.
Thank you for being here as our first guest. You've been watching One on One. Join us again tomorrow for another edition.